My name is Carla, and I am a year-round volunteer for OCC. And I had that privilege, as you just heard, of going to Tanzania, Africa to deliver the boxes. And it was just as wonderful as you would think it would be. Well, since 1993, Operation Christmas Child has delivered more than 198 million shoebox gifts to more than 170 countries, sharing God's love with children suffering from poverty, from war, from natural disaster. And with each box, that child gets the gospel in their language. And this year, we expect to collect our 200 millionth shoebox gift. And New Life Community Church is a part of that. So when you pack a shoebox, it's a tool that is used that's enabling thousands of churches around the world to share God's love with children. And with every box, the children gets a copy of the greatest gift. I left copies of it out on the table in the lobby so that you can see. It's a colorful storybook, and it tells the entire gospel and tells the story of Jesus. And the children in Africa were so happy to get that gift. Some of them said that was the favorite thing that they received. And in the chaos, you can imagine the chaos of them getting to open their gifts and look inside. And dance parties erupted in some of them. They were just so excited. They were so joyful. But never was one of those gospel booklets left behind. And in fact, I saw sometimes a mother on the side reading the booklet while the kids were doing their thing. So those gospel booklets get shared with all of the children, and it's in their own language. And every distribution begins with a local teacher sharing the good news about Jesus with the children in their language. And in Tanzania, my favorite part, I couldn't understand a lot of it because it was in Swahili, but my favorite part was when they put up the picture of Jesus, and the teachers would ask children if they wanted to put their trust in Jesus to stand up or to raise their hand, and I'd always be crying when that happened. It was beautiful, and that gift was much more beautiful, much more life-changing than anything they could receive in their shoeboxes. And by the way, a part of that $10 donation for shipping helps to cover the cost of these teachers. And in Tanzania alone, 1,500 teachers had to be trained so that they could give that gospel lesson. And then also, after the children receive their box, they're given the opportunity to participate in a 12-lesson discipleship program. And those teachers also had to be trained and materials provided for them to do that discipleship program. And that's called The Greatest Journey. And again, I have a copy of the booklet in the back. I can still remember one little girl. We got to witness them doing the training, the 12-week discipleship. And the one little girl, her book, I wish I could have brought it with me. It was so tattered. She wanted to show us everything she had written inside. It was like she carried it with her everywhere. And then that's one other thing I can tell you, that when the children opened their boxes, as you can imagine, if someone gave you a gift, you'd want to know who it came from. So I was talking to Debbie a little bit about, do you put something inside to say where these boxes came from? And I suggest a letter or a picture, because I saw, a girl get a box and there was a picture of a couple in there, and she hugged the picture of the couple, just thanking them, in her heart for sending this box to her. So since 2009, more than 30.9 million children who have received a shoebox have decided to do the 12-lesson discipleship program. And when they graduate, they receive a Bible in their own language. And more than 14.9 million children have reported decisions for Christ while doing that 12-week discipleship program. My friend Linda is going to share a little bit about one of the stories we want to share.
Thanks, Carla. Good morning. It's so nice to be here and fellowship with you and know that you are part of this wonderful ministry. When Carla was saying about, putting notes in the bottom of a shoebox, we heard a story just recently at our project leaders meeting for someone who was up to hear Franklin Graham, who was up in the Reading area. I don't know if any of you were able to get there. I was not, unfortunately. But he shared a story with them about a little boy that was at a distribution, and he was sitting there holding his box, and he didn't want to open it. And when they do a distribution, Basically, they stand up front, and I'm just going to show you real quick. They'll stand up front, and they do a presentation. They do a gospel presentation. And this is what would happen when they're there before they open their boxes. They hold this up, and they read to them, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And God created people like you and me to know and to love and to obey him." So they start the whole thing. They teach them that. They go through it. And each step, it explains the gospel ministry. Well, they had done that. And then they do a countdown. And it's 3, 2, 1. And the kids dig into their boxes, and they get to see, well, this one little boy was just sitting there and not opening his box. And all his friends were opening their boxes. And the people like Carla who have gone on the distributions, they went over and they said, through a translator, said, why are you not opening your box? And he wouldn't answer them. And they kept saying, but there's so many things. Somebody special sent you a gift. And he finally said, there's nothing in there for me. And they said, what I need is not in that box. And they said, well, what do you need? And he said, I need parents. And just hearing the story brought tears to my eyes. And I wasn't even there. And so they proceeded to say, well, honey, no, there's not parents in your box. But there's some wonderful gifts, and why don't you open it up? So he finally agreed. He opened the box, and he was leafing through things. And in the bottom of the box, he found a picture of a couple that had sent him that box with a little note and saying that he was loved and that God loved him and that they loved him. Well, long story short, I don't know all the details. A year later, they adopted that little boy. So you truly know that what goes in a shoebox, God will honor and use. And I think that's one of the things I wanted to share with you this morning. What do you put in? Oh, what do I pack? Well, hygiene items, school supplies. Like Carla said, put a note in. Because in that particular case, it was life-changing. But they all are. And God knows exactly where that box is going to go and who needs that box, as exhibited in that story. And that's one of thousands of stories of what happens in the life of a shoebox. But the most important thing that you can put in your box is prayer. That needs to be blanketed in prayer, because we know that whatever you prayed about and put in that box, God is going to send that to that child, that specific child with that need. We've heard stories of a little boy who needed shoes. And by golly, there were shoes in his shoebox, and a little girl who just wanted to go to school and had no pencils. Guess what was in her shoebox, And so just stories like that all through. And if you're interested in more stories, you can go to Samaritan's Purse website, go to Operation Christmas Child, and they will share some of those stories with you. So make sure when you pack your boxes, you put lots of prayer in it. And just know that God is sending that box specifically to that individual. I want to explain to you, too, a little bit, because I do the processing center. I'm very jealous of Carla. One day I'll get to do a distribution is my prayer. There are certain protocols to be able to be eligible, and you have to be chosen. And I haven't been chosen yet, but that's okay. That's okay. If God never sends me there, I get to do all this. But I do go to the processing center. Now, we have a local processing center in Baltimore, which a lot of people, and I know Carla, and we'll be around afterwards if you have questions or things you'd like to ask us. But I know Carla's church is taking a team down in the beginning of December to Baltimore for just a day, and she can explain more about that. I do a trip that goes to Charlotte, North Carolina, which is one of the bigger processing centers, and we go down for a 4-day period. And just to let you know what happens at the processing center, when your boxes come in, you drop them off at a drop-off location, and they are then packed in trailers and shipped to Charlotte or Baltimore. I think we have 8 processing centers around the country. The closest one, and they are then taken and inspected. Just to be aware that they need to be inspected, because we can't get them into customs unless they've been inspected and passed. And you have to make sure there's certain items that are in there, aren't in there. So when we get to the processing center, those shoe boxes are all opened, every single one, and they are looked through. Just know that unless it's an item that cannot be in that box, everything that you have packed in that box will stay in that box. We don't take them and disassemble them and say, oh, well, this one needs this and this one needs that. What you put in that box stays in that box. And so then they are taped up, cartonized, and sent on containers, and then they're shipped out around the world where they get taken through customs. And then they partner with our national leadership teams around the world, which are volunteers as well, who set up distributions. So just wanted to give you a little inkling of what happens with the shoe boxes once they leave you. And usually after you've done at the processing center, that's the last set of hands that are on it before that child opens that box. So we appreciate every box. Thank you so much for packing, and thank you for having us this morning. We will be here afterwards. If you have questions, we'll be down with your fellowship time, and we'll be more than willing to answer any questions you might have. So thank you for having us.